When it comes to gaming's most iconic stories, games like Red Dead Redemption 2, The Witcher, and so many other titles that are told through different forms of media, there's one specific story, book, whatever, that's been told through different forms of media, but sadly hasn't been presented properly in the form of video games. I'm talking about Lord of the Rings, of course. And the best game you can find about Lord of the Rings is Shadow of War and its predecessor Shadow of Mordor. A game that, if not for its issues that we are going to talk about, is a pretty good representation, or shall I say adaptation, of Lord of the Rings. They do change a lot of things admittedly, but honestly this game executes some of its story beats better than a certain show.
You know who I am.
And keep in mind that this game was announced to be non-canon anyways. Please do note that for the most part in this video, I will not be talking about the gameplay at all. But if you're wondering if this game is worth playing, well,
Got one word for you, maggot.
then yeah, just go ahead and buy it. At least the Nemesis system will keep you busy, and the orcs are really charming and funny.
You been getting hit by the hammer? There's a headache at most.
It's a pretty good game, go buy it, it's worth it. But as entertaining as this game is, I'm going to be talking about the story, because I think that if they executed the story of this game better, specifically the pacing, this game would have done a lot better the year it released, that year being 2017. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Spoiler alert, we will be talking about all the shows and books you see on the screen. This is Al, and of course, we will be talking about what's good, what's bad, and what's ugly about Middle-earth Shadow of War.
Solomon the Stinky!
So, from the day of its release, die-hard Lord of the Rings fans did not like this game. Some saying they gave the orcs too much personality.
You wanna kill an Uruk, you gotta take the head clean off.
Some didn't like the background stories they gave to the Nazguls, and some didn't like the fact that they made Isildur a Nazgul. Me, I am that someone. This was the most random change in the universe. More on that later. To me, both orcs and the Nazgul are blank canvases that can be expanded on as long as it makes sense with the original story. Isildur being a Nazgul just doesn't do it for me though. I guess you can make the argument that in the game's lore, him and Talion both come back from the dead, and considering that Talion eventually replaces him, you could say they're both necromancers. Also, it's quite ironic that he and Talion commanded that army of their own city. Speaking of Talion, I just realized I haven't introduced him yet. Fuck it, meet Talion, the protagonist of the game, a ranger from the Black Gates who watched his wife and son be killed by the Black Hand of Sauron, later revived by a random race who doesn't remember his path. After the events of Shadow of Mordor, this race regains his memory and turns out to be none other than Celebrimbor, the elf that in canon made Sauron's rings, which he used to control the Nazgul. Talion, filled by revenge and wanting to put an end to Sauron after killing those who were responsible for killing his family, asked Celebrimbor to make a new ring. Shadow of War picks up that story right where they make the new ring in Mount Doom. A blast separates Talion from Celebrimbor, and in that moment Shelob swoops in to take Celebrimbor away. Talion then, with his dying breath, grabs the ring and puts it on. He then sets off to find Celebrimbor and Shelob. After finding them, Shelob holds Celebrimbor hostage and in return takes the new ring from Talion. She then grants him a vision showing Minas Ithil falling and then just disappears, I guess. Talion, worried that the vision might come true, rushes to Minas Ithil despite Celebrimbor's desire to just get the ring back and get on with it. However, there exists a certain
Palantir.
in Minas Ithil, same one Sauron uses later in the lore, so he decides to play along for now. Arriving there, it turns out Shelob's vision was true and Minas Ithil was being raided by Witch King's orcs. Talion, in an attempt to save the city, joins forces with the Gondorians, meeting General Castamir and his daughter Idril. Sadly though, Castamir betrays the city in an attempt to save his daughter, but well, this is the Witch King we're talking about, everyone knows how this is gonna go. Castamir dies and Idril is saved by Talion. He fights off the Nazgul but almost gets dominated by the Witch King. Almost, because he's saved by an elf.
Bruh, look at this dude.
More on this elf later. Realizing that the Nazgul are going to hunt down Shelob in order to get rid of their new ring, they rush to save her. After doing so, Shelob gives the ring back to Talion and asks him to go build his army. From here on out, the story is mostly fighting the Nazgul and uncovering some of their backstory, arguing with Celebrimbor, and most importantly, dominating orcs and building the army. Once those are done, we will get back to this, I promise. Of course, if you have any idea about Lord of the Rings, you know that Sauron doesn't die by this point of the story. At the doorstep of the fortress, Talion is confronted by the last remaining Nazgul who isn't banished yet, and that's Isildur. Again, Talion defeats him, Isildur's ring falls to the ground, and Talion frees his soul of Sauron's grasp. Celebrimbor, however, gets mad and yells at Talion that he wasn't his to free because he wanted to dominate him. They get into a confrontation because Talion wants to end Sauron once and for all, but Celebrimbor wants to dominate him and rule on his throne.
I will not trade one Dark Lord for another.
TLDR being that Celebrimbor betrays him and leaves him to die. Forced to make a choice, he takes the Nazgul's ring, Isildur in this case, and puts it on. But by this point, he still hasn't fallen to Sauron. He has some control over himself, so he goes back to Minas Morgul, does this.
I am one, but we are many.
And holds back Mordor from Minas Ithil for decades, but eventually falls to Sauron and becomes an Nazgul. Completing the Holy Trinity of the Bright Lord, the Dark Lord, and of course, the Edgelord. I realize I have not talked about Eltariel yet, but I promise we will talk about her extensively. Now that you have an overview of the general story, the reason I say this game is much more loyal to Tolkien's works than Ring of Power is because Shadow of War explores one of the biggest themes in Lord of the Rings, replacing evil through the right means. And the way the books decide to represent that idea is through Gandalf and Frodo. In the books, Frodo asks Gandalf why doesn't he just put on the ring and go 1v1 Sauron and just defeat him once and for all. To which Gandalf says that if he was to ever put on the ring would just corrupt them using his pity and kindness towards the people of Middle-earth.
Pity? It was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand.
And considering that a lot of people would start worshipping this corrupted version of Gandalf as the hero who defeated Sauron, nobody would know the line between good and evil anymore because it would become so blurry. Hello Future Me has a very good video on the topic where he goes much more depth into this rabbit hole, so if you want to know more, that's the place to check out. The game explores a similar idea, but it also presents a question. Talion isn't wearing the One Ring, he's wearing Celebrimbor's new ring, which apparently is clean and doesn't have Sauron's influence on it.
It's different. We can use it to defeat Sauron.
But Sauron isn't the only thing that causes corruption, because the One Ring arguably corrupted even Sauron himself. Okay, wait, pause. Hello, this is the editing Al. Insert your favorite YouTuber remembers something during the edit that he did not say in the original script. No, Celebrimbor's ring is not free of Sauron's influence, because it literally grows when Minas Ithil falls and Sauron finally gets his hands on the plant here. And if you think about it, it was made using the same teachings the Sauron gave to Celebrimbor, so no, it's not free of Sauron's influence. Yeah, that's it, thank you. Moving on. But Sauron isn't the only thing that causes corruption, because the One Ring arguably corrupted even Sauron himself. The power trip these rings cause is the main thing that corrupts their bearer. The shortcut that the ring grants to its user, other than the fact that you're immortal in it, and the other abilities it grants you. The power to dominate is just simply really OP. Now I'll be honest, I don't know if this whole dominating fiasco the game presents is supported by the books or not. As far as I understand, only the One Ring has that capability, but in the game we see the Witch King and also the Nazgul, Talion himself, while wearing the Nazgul ring, dominate other people's minds. Point is, the ability to just dominate whoever is opposed to you is a shortcut that ultimately causes Talion and Celebrimbor's corruption. Sure, at the moment they're using it to subdue Sauron's servants and build an army against them. These are orcs, he says. Well, doing it against their will, but they will be fun, he says. Who's to guarantee that we won't be doing this later, after we've defeated Sauron, to silence some little blogger who's opposed to the
Bright Lord!
Right, yes, because this is no longer Sauron, whose name literally means these are heroes, and same with Gandalf. People will worship this corrupted version of Talion. This is the vision Shelob sees and prevents it by causing disagreements between Talion and Celebrimbor early on.
See the future you have wrought.
Showing Talion visions of his people's despair and causing him to try and make a difference, despite Celebrimbor's disagreement.
Talion.
This happens over and over and over throughout the game until it reaches its boiling point.
I release you! No!
So in its own vacuum, considering this game is non-canon, idea-wise the game sits on a pretty good foundation, and the main characters it uses to try and tell that story from Talion's perspectives are also pretty good.
So, Talion, did we make a difference?
And of course those characters are the Nazgul, Shelob, Celebrimbor, the Gondorians, and she who shall not be named, Eltariel.
You killed me.
And yet you live.
Starting with the Nazgul, I love the fact that the game takes the time to expand on their backstory, and that for the most part, the story keeps up with the theme of the rings corrupting these individuals. There are a lot of ways you can interpret the way these rings corrupt their users, but my personal headcanon is that they amplify the dominant emotion you feel to the point that it corrupts you.
For your daughter's safe return.
For example, Talion's dominant emotion is revenge, and by the point that he's finally able to get rid of it by joining Sauron, he simply gives in to the corruption and accepts it. For the hypothetical corrupted Gandalf, it's his love and pity for the people of Middle-earth. For the Sterling sisters, it's their desire for power and admiration, which ultimately turns into greed. For Hammerhand, it's his desire to protect his daughter, which turns into anger, which costs him, his daughter, and his own men. Whatever you believe, I think you will agree that they really nailed the visualization of how this world would look. The designs of the different areas of Mordor, each even having their unique music, is simply just beautiful. Sauron himself, his fair form, and his armor look really good. The vanilla version of this armor, in my opinion, looks really bad, and I think it's too slim and it doesn't make Sauron look cool or intimidating. This armor, though, feels like a good balance between ancient elf-looking Maya, whom has died 1,000,000 times by this point, and a badass edgy Dark Lord. The only design I do not like though is the Witch King's armor. He doesn't look half as intimidating as he does in the movies, and I wish they did something similar to that. Also, unlike a lot of the fan base, I don't entirely hate Shelob. I'm okay with the design, although I think just making her into a creepy spider with a female voice would make her so much more menacing and much more mysterious. But this is okay, like whatever. The issue though is that the game, due to its very famous mechanic, namely the Nemesis system, has serious pacing issues. And in my opinion, the character that represents that the best is Shelob.
Your brother's here dead and butchered, and there's nothing you can do about it.
So before I get into the pacing issue, first I'm going to talk about some of the issues that I have that aren't the pacing, starting with some of the dumbest lore changes that they have done that serve no purpose to the lore of the game or how it progresses and are just dumb. Firstly, Celebrimbor.
I like him.
I'm not talking about the fact that they make Celebrimbor into a monster in this game. After all, he was a blank canvas. In the books, he made the rings and that's kind of it. The change here that annoys me is that apparently he made the One Ring as well.
And you had the One Ring.
So if you don't know Lord of the Rings, the One Ring is the ring that Sauron, keyword, himself made in Mount Doom. Before that, he tricks Celebrimbor into making the rest of the rings. The One Ring can influence those rings and dominate their bearers, basically makes them Sauron's slaves, aka the Nazgul. But in the games, there are these memory sequences that are supposed to give us backstories about Celebrimbor's war against Sauron.
Why?
And in one of these memory sequences, specifically the first one, and honestly pretty much every single one of them, we see Celebrimbor wearing the One Ring and attacking Mordor.
Why?
Oh, and where do we find these memory sequences? In some ruins that Celebrimbor claims.
This city is built on the ruins of my kingdom.
Why?
Your kingdom? For context, this is the Lord of the Rings map, and Celebrimbor's kingdom was up north, and Mordor is all the way down south.
Why? Why, oh God, fucking...
Another dumb point, which is a bit of a nitpick admittedly, is the fact that during the sequence we are in the gateway of Minas Ithil and not Barad-dûr for some reason. You know, Barad-dûr is Sauron's fortress. Speaking of kings and kingdoms, why is Isildur in Nazgul now? What plot does this progress? And why him specifically? Because he had the One Ring? See, the thing is, in the books, he has the One Ring after he defeats Sauron. But he never uses it. Actually, he does use it once to make an escape from Sauron's orcs hunting for the One Ring. Unlike what the game shows, he doesn't want the One Ring. In fact, he never claims it. In the books, after the ring falls off his fingers and is lost in the river, it's implied that he's even relieved that now he can die in peace. Hell, you can argue that him going there is the entire reason the ring is lost. And fun fact, the Sauron we're dealing with throughout the game doesn't have the One Ring. And thank God for that, because if they gave it to Sauron, then I would have a stroke. Also, I think Sauron would really be pissed off at these orcs who lost his ring. These guys probably died horribly. Another question, why does Sauron turn into his fair form of all of his forms during the ending? He looks even less intimidating than his movie armor. For the dominating part, sure, but before that, hey, look at this cool move I learned from your friend Isildur. Cuts his fingers. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about the biggest issue this game has. If all the previously mentioned issues are minor issues, this one is a major issue. To understand the issue, we first need to establish the fact that this game has 4 chapters. Among these chapters, the second and the fourth chapters are the longest. The first act focuses on the Minas Ithil plotline and introducing the characters. The second act, Rise to Power, is where you'll familiarize yourself with the Nemesis system and play around with it. The third act is the ending called Shadow and Flames, and the fourth act is basically, okay, we're done with the story, go play with the Nemesis system and buy loot boxes. And if you play long enough, you'll get the final ending where Talion eventually is freed by getting hit by a ball of lava after Sauron falls. So far, so good. The problem is, after the first chapter, the game's focus shifts entirely from the story to the Nemesis system. And as I said, the second chapter is the longest because the game wants you to conquer all of Mordor, which consists of 5 regions, which takes a long time, especially if you don't play more than 2 to 3 hours a day, which in this case, I don't. It will take weeks to conquer all of Mordor. Dare I say, the Nemesis system in Chapter 2, and honestly 4, overstays its welcome. Part of this issue is due to the fact that Warner Bros. Had the brilliant idea of selling war chests. These war chests gave you orcs and let you progress faster. Because believe it or not, these chapters took even longer back in the day. When the games released, all they wanted to do was essentially sell what was loot boxes. And it's a shame too, because the game is fixed now, these loot boxes are removed, and Chapter 4 is shortened significantly. But I think instead of shortening Chapter 4, they should have shortened Chapter 2, because Chapter 2 still has that same issue of overstaying its welcome. To be fair, it's not really overstaying its welcome, it's just the fact that the developers completely forgot about the plot until the ending. Now, there are story missions in Chapter 2, but they're mostly related to Eltariel, the Nazgul, and some of them are related to the Gondorian. The story is there, but the center stage is obviously given to the Nemesis system. Now, this wouldn't be a bad thing if the game didn't stretch the whole conquering thing in Chapter 2 so much, and due to this issue, you'd be completely forgiven for forgetting the plotline of Chapter 1 and what it was trying to set up. Remember that I said that Shelob is the best representation of this? Well, that's because Shelob is completely absent in the second chapter. As long as she's around, the story takes center stage because, you know, she kind of sets up the whole thing. But as soon as she disappears, well, so does the story. When I first played this game, as I was playing Chapter 2, the biggest question in my head was, what was the point of Shelob if she was gonna just take the ring and give it back anyways? And when I eventually reached the ending, it felt unearned. Is that the word? Because in my mind, the game didn't bother to set up this betrayal. But on my second playthrough, sometimes later, I realized that it was set up. How it was set up, we'll talk about that, but it was kind of set up. However, while remembering roughly what happened in chapter 1, I didn't remember all the details. I didn't even remember the fact that Shelob literally says,
You and Sauron are one.
Shelob sees this vision of how Bright Lord will be worse than Sauron and prevented it, but I never noticed that. And I don't think I'm alone on this. To prove my theory, all you need to do is go look at the clip of the ending of Shadow of War on YouTube. You will find a comment of someone quoting Bruce the Chopper's iconic line,
Bright Lord, Dark Lord, same thing really.
but you will not find anybody talking about the other instances of the game foreshadowing this betrayal. And no one seems to talk about this. Though admittedly, this is partly due to the fact that Bruce is way more likable than any other character in this game.
Deadly smart, which, I guess he'd have to be given the 2 heads.
Oh, Ratbag is pretty fun too. But the fact that nobody seems to talk about chapter 1 or anything about it just shows you how badly they paced the entire story. Because why does everybody remember Bruce's line? Because Bruce acts as your introduction to the Nemesis system. He explained everything to you as your assistant sort of thing. So what the player base remembers is mainly the Nemesis system. I mean, look online, this game is basically known for the Nemesis system and who introduces it, but they don't remember anything else. So after all that rambling, what can be done to fix this issue? Simple. Don't shorten chapter 4 and shorten chapter 2 instead. Basically, don't have player conquering all of Mordor. Instead, make like 2 to 3 areas mandatory for the ending and the rest optional. They can be done in Act 4 and here in Act 2 if you want to, but they're not necessary. This solves 2 things. This way, the story missions during Act 2 become closer to each other and there's less distance between Act 1 and Act 3. Which is the ending. Then, if the player wants to play around with the Nemesis system, they can just hop on to Act 4 and do it to their heart's content. This would ironically let the developers sell more loot boxes. Please don't get any ideas though they're gone now for good.
But at what cost?
So after all this talking, you may notice this video isn't done yet. That's because we need to talk about a certain character. A character that I've not talked about yet and I keep putting it off for later. Well, later is here, and that character is Eltariel.
You killed me.
And I'll do it again, bitch! Eltariel is hard to describe. She starts as a somewhat likable character, but by the beginnings of the story, she obviously serves as a plot convenience. Right from the moment, she very conveniently shows up right on time to save Talion from the Witch King. From there, she becomes this hunter that's going after the Nazgul, and Talion just kinda goes with her because their goals align. Then, literally out of nowhere, she betrays Talion, joins the Ringmaker she hated back when they first met, and then gets Sauron versus Isildur finger treatment and loses the fight to Sauron. Celebrimbor, this happens to him? What? I have no idea what happened here.
Ooh, I'm gonna be all up in those feet. Oh, I'm gonna just be sucking on each one of those tootsies. You can't hide.
He doesn't die, clearly. When Sauron finally falls, we see his spirit going away, but it's not exactly explained what happens to him. Anyways, moving on. Eltariel, in my opinion, is the second biggest fuck-up of this entire story. Pacing is one thing, but even if the pacing wasn't an issue, Eltariel still would have been just a badly written character. At least Celebrimbor's betrayal and Talion's fall was foreshadowed throughout the entire game. But Eltariel? Eltariel feels like a character they made just to give Celebrimbor a host and to use her as a plot convenience wherever they needed to. Now I admit, I am reading way too much into this. This is a video game after all. Having a plot convenience character would be fine if it was well written. The spoiler alert, she's not. She does a complete 180 during the ending, out of nowhere. I mean, it's set up a little, but due to the pacing issue, it's not exactly remembered by the audience. And even if that was fine, she's just unlikable. And the thing is, I don't think this was intended since, you know, she's the protagonist of the DLC, which means that developers intended for her to become somewhat likable at least and give her a redemption arc.
Saragost.
Whereas you now wear the ring.
I will not dominate these orcs. But I will bring them back, one way or another.
Before I continue, do note that I haven't played the DLC. I know the entire story, all the cutscenes and all that, but I don't know all the details. So say everything I say about the DLC with a bit of a grain of salt. Yeah. Now you might think just making her not betray Talion would fix her issue. Yes? Well, yeah, that would fix it, but that's less fun. So instead, I'm gonna propose a different idea and take the harder route. See, in my opinion, the betrayal isn't the problem. Ultimately, it makes sense that she would be desperate to end this war and just go home. Think about it. She's at the doorstep of Barad-dûr with an army about to end it all right here, right now. This is an opportunity of a lifetime that nobody gets in this world, but she has. But sadly, she doesn't have the perspective that Talion has, so she makes the wrong choice. And that choice costs her big time. And a finger, don't forget that. She lost a finger. In the DLC, she accepts the fact that she fucked up big time and in her own way tries to make it up to Talion. Stays her hand when Talion, who's wearing a Nazgul ring, who is a Nazgul, and her job is to hunt Nazguls, asks her for help. Talion himself doesn't seem to blame her too much and initially trusts her to do what's right if he was to ever turn bad. Fun fact, Talion held back Mordor for a long time before turning into a Nazgul, and can you guess what caused him to finally fall? Yep, Eltariel returning caused him to go evil.
Do not betray the man you were.
You speak to me of betrayal. You abandoned me. You and Celebrimbor.
Ironically, the Witch King and the Nazgul were more of a brother to him than anyone ever was. At least he didn't try to backstab him left and right. Okay, I went off track again. Where was I? Right, Eltariel. So, the writing for Eltariel feels inconsistent. In the beginning of Act 2, she seems likable and she's completely against Talion having the ring, even going as far to ask him to destroy it. She says she's seen great men corrupted by these rings. That's called foreshadowing. After a while, she starts coming around on the idea of Talion having the ring, but is still against Celebrimbor, saying his doings is what started all of this mess.
A drake would have been a great asset.
Then, by the midpoint of Act 2, she starts seeing Celebrimbor and Talion as friends and brother-in-arms sort of situation. Although still against dominating orcs, and she never changes her mind on that, even after having the ring for herself. In Act 3, the ending, as I said, feeling like she needs to carry this out and end Sauron once and for all, she decides to betray Talion. In my opinion, the betrayal itself is somewhat understandable. It's still a betrayal, she's still a bitch for that. But the problem is that the devs made her so smug about the whole situation. After taking the ring, as Talion is bleeding on the floor, she turns to him and says this.
Our sacrifices are not in vain. This is the only way.
Why, oh God, fucking!
As if he's making the sacrifice willingly. To fix this, there are two routes. The obvious one is to just intentionally make her into a betrayer, kind of like Castamere. No redemption arc, no DLC main character, nothing. Although I think that's boring. So, option number 2, flesh out the betrayal a lot more. To do that, all you have to do is make her feel conflicted about her choice. First, she tries to convince Celebrimbor, but he nor Talion are not stepping back. Then, Celebrimbor offers her the ring. She looks at Talion, then looks at Barad-dûr, and decides, hesitantly, to take the ring. And here, she doesn't look or talk to Talion at all, and just walks away. The run roll, please. I just fixed Eltariel. Okay, fix is a strong word, because she's still a bitch, but her arc is presented a lot better this way, and a redemption arc can be in order. Hell, if you're feeling particularly lazy, just get rid of this one shot of her talking to Talion, and that's it. It will at least make her a lot more tolerable. And that's it. After all that yapping about Eltariel and the bad plot lines and Shelob, there's one question left. Why am I taking a video game's story so seriously? I don't know. But what I do know is that my rambling about the story shouldn't prevent you from experiencing this masterpiece of a game. As I said many times, the story isn't on the center stage in this game. So if you haven't played this game, just go play it. It's a lot of fun, and the Nemesis system alone and the power fantasy brings you will be an experience. This was Al, and thank you for giving me the time of your day. If you feel like it, go do all the like, subscribe, YouTube stuff, but most importantly, thank you for watching.
Look at it this way, soon you'll be dead. But with all of us as witnesses, you won't be forgotten.
Seriously, go play this game. Man, fuck Eltariel.